Sure, my passion for animation has existed for as long as I can remember. You know, I was always a massive fan of Disney movies, and for a long time I wanted to be an animator. So being a part of this really is a dream come true. Well, they take it very seriously. They have an unbelievable collection of artists, not just physical animators, but storytellers, actors. Um, their ability to weave lessons within a story is second to none. I've always said it's almost like a potter's wheel. You know, they spend 4 years refining these stories and making sure every rhythm, every beat works. That's why all their stories are so tight and effective. But they can traverse from drama into comedy back to action so effortlessly. It's really a marvel to watch. Buzz Lightyear is a space ranger. You know, we all know him. We all know the character. He's obviously of strong moral fiber. He's dedicated, he's loyal, he's honest, he's determined. In the movie Lightyear, he struggles with accepting the mistakes he's made, which is something I think most of us go through, and living in those mistakes and dwelling on the past and not recognizing that mistakes are human and that mistakes are actually an opportunity for growth. You know, how do I relate to Buzz? I relate to Buzz, I suppose, in the sense that I tried to give him a voice. You know, I mean, he's a good man. He tries to do his best. He tries to be loyal to his friends. He tries to do what's right. So I guess in that regard, we have some overlap, but his pedigree is well above mine. I wouldn't pretend to compare myself to him. Alicia is someone he looks up to and trusts and wants to honor and impress and make proud. And that's part of the reason why it's so heartbreaking for him to lose that friendship while trying to achieve his goal for the sake of humanity. Well, I hope they fall in love with a character that they know well in a new way. It's always tough to see something you're familiar with in a different light, but I think Pixar has done a really good job of picking the moments of Buzz that we all are so connected to and finding a more nuanced, human, grounded interpretation of that character for us to simultaneously love.
Lightyear is a movie that tells the story of the real-life Buzz Lightyear, which is the hero Andy fell in love with and inspired him to get the doll. Alicia is the commander of the Space Ranger fleet. She is a strong, confident, capable leader who loves her job, but also is a dear friend to Buzz. She and Buzz find themselves, along with their fleet, marooned on an abandoned planet, and are tasked with the job of finding a way back home. Yeah, I think that's anybody who loves their job is able to find the sweet and the power of that job. And she takes her job very seriously, knows that she has an important job of leading all of those who follow her, but she also knows that life has so much more joy and other ways in which joy can be found. And she takes the job of leading Buzz into that joy very seriously as well, because I think she thinks that'll help to make him a better Space Ranger. Like a dream come true. It feels like an absolute joy. The first time I read it and I saw that was in the script, I was like, wow, oh my gosh, is that where that line comes from? And then when we were in the booth and we were finally shooting, I could not believe those words were coming out of my mouth. I was just blown away. I was so excited. It felt unbelievable, but like such a joy at the same time. My Toy Story connection is I had just started babysitting when this movie came out. And I remember I was babysitting my neighbor's children, and they had the movie and loved it so much and wanted to watch it. And I don't know, like they put it in and thought it was something that only they were going to enjoy, but then I felt so connected to it and drawn to the story, and the kid in me sort of felt even more awakened.
Lightyear is, so obviously we know Buzz comes from Toy Story, and the idea is that in Toy Story, he had a toy Buzz Lightyear, and that action figure came from the movie Lightyear. So Lightyear is the movie that made Andy want to get the Buzz Lightyear action figure.
And technically, Tim Allen's voice, everyone's like he's the original. Technically, he was copied off Chris Evans' voice from the film. Technically, he recorded that after the movie came out. So we're in a time loop. We're in a time loop here. You know, as a storyteller myself, my impression of Pixar as storytellers themselves is that I've always looked up to them. I've been watching the Pixar films for many years. You know, I've got all-time favorites like Up and Inside Out, because you know they gave the message, you know, to just not only to us but to children especially, you know, that it's okay to be in touch with human emotions and that emotions are real, and that, you know, there are things that human problems and things you're going to go through when you grow older, and it's all valid, and you know, prepare yourself, and that's what everyone goes through. And I think Up is one of the greatest films because it's, you know, it's just that image of having to get rid of all of the stuff out of his house, and including those last two heavy chairs, which are the things, his memories and the things that he was holding on to, you know, with his wife. But in order for him to fly and save this kid and to set off into the sky and also into the future, you got to let that stuff go. And you know, and that's what's freeing. It's just simple, beautiful messages like that. It's why the Pixar films are the greatest.
Oh man, Takani Prime. It is. It's got sentient plants. And so it's as though you're in the Amazon, but it's trying to move in and get itself around your arms and legs at all times. Part of what the Zap Patrol does is keep this sort of living snake-like foliage cut back to help, you know, let people move from one place to the other. That's sort of the big image I have of Takani Prime. There's a lot of industrial-looking buildings that were built after they got marooned there over the period of time that they've actually, you know, tried to make have made a city of some kind.
The Junior Zap Patrol are consisting of myself, Izzy, my character, Izzy Hawthorne, Darby, Mo, and essentially, and Derek, or Eric, I should say, which you'll see in the movie. But essentially, they are a patrol that is not quite yet at the level of being, you know, the real, you know, the real Rangers. So they're kind of like assembled this junior patrol where they're trying to learn and figure out how to actually become, you know, get to that next level of actually being real, quote unquote, heroes.
So Lightyear is the film that was made back in 1994, and which then inspired the toy that was made afterwards that Andy from the Toy Story films asked his mother for his birthday. And so she went out in 1995 when that film came out, she got the toy and gave it to Andy. And so that's sort of like the universe of Toy Story and Buzz Lightyear and how they related.
Well, everything in some respects was certainly with regard to working with a fantastically talented and in my opinion they must be very good-hearted people to have turned out the kind of films that they have turned out, which are heart and wise and inside of you and outside of you and, you know, appealing to children and adults. It's really it's a phenomenon. And I'm sure that, you know, it's been nurtured in a certain kind of way, but I'm very happy to be part of it. Very happy. That's Darby's version of being very happy.
So Izzy Hawthorne, her grandmother is actually Alicia Hawthorne, who was a ranger, a space ranger with Buzz Lightyear. So she has all this history of who Buzz is, and she has all this really rich, great history about the legacy of her grandmother as this amazing space ranger before they got marooned, where Izzy essentially grew up. And so Izzy is just this curious, emerging leader who already has all the tools that she needs to be everything that she wants to be, but her journey in Lightyear is about discovering that herself, and with all of her friends in the Junior Zap Patrol.
Mo Morrison is the character I play, and he comes from a broken home. He was raised by his mother in a community full of solo mothers. So he's only ever known women. He feels comfortable around women, and so like this little group is perfect for him. He's got Izzy and he's got Darby, who kind of guide him. He looks up to them, and he wants to help, but just because he's often clumsy and unfocused and not concentrating, it often leads to more problems when he does try to help.
Okay, well, Darby Steele is a woman of an advanced age, who's in very good shape, who is recently been incarcerated, and part of her parole may be lessened if she does well as a part of the Junior Zap Patrol. It's sort of like community service for me, It turns out to be much, much more than that. It gives me actually a purpose to end up in the story, actually, becoming the crew. It's very, fantastic for her.
Well, first I'd like to say when it comes to Pixar and Disney, especially for this character, Izzy, who is so major in terms of representation, I appreciated how they really took the time with her hair and the differentiation between her character and her grandmother Alicia. They look different. They come from the same lineage. You can see the resemblance, but they're their own person. And that's also apparent in the attributes of her personality. Izzy has a lot of the same qualities that her grandmother had because she helped raise her. However, she has her own personal journey and experience, which I think we all can relate to when we're trying to reach back from what our parents gave us or what our legacy means to us, and how we're able to channel that into who we actually are and what we can bring to the table as individuals. So watching her go on that journey is really cool.
So Buzz has this singular focus throughout the film, which is to accomplish his original mission, which is to manufacture the correct crystal so that they can achieve super Lightyear space travel, and in doing so get his colony back home. And it's because of his big mistake that they're trapped on Takani Prime. So he's trying to rectify that. He's trying to make amends and atone for what he did. But every time he goes out, he travels around the star, and it takes him about 3 or 4 minutes. But every time he does that, for everyone back on Takani Prime, it takes about 4 years. So he goes out time and time again trying to fix this mistake. And as he does so, he misses out on a whole life. And he loses friends, and people grow old back on the planet, and that's a major sacrifice that he has to make. Is that he sees his life and what could have been pass him by because of this obsession.
That she's never she's never knowingly unkind or cruel. She's just annoyed and curmudgeonly. And easily annoyed. But if, she's straightforward. Just simple and straightforward. And she has a lot of skills, and she knows she has a lot of skills, and she knows how to use them. For instance, I have here a bobby pin. And I could probably get into any lock in the state of California with that bobby pin. But it's pretty legal,
I also have a pen. I've got this pen, and I think if I gave that to Dale, what she could do with that bobby pin and this pen.
only, the saints preserve us. We don't know what would happen. And I think she likes the fact that she's accomplished at ingenuity. She does not have a lot of mathematical learning, but she understands the physics principles and knows how to apply them in such a way that she can take any three things and make them do something that they wouldn't have done before, shall we say.
For a while now, I've been talking about the first time I watched Toy Story and been talking about how when I was a kid, how it affected me, and growing up, having watched Toy Story was a big deal. In actual fact, I realized I wasn't a child at all. I was 20 years old when I first saw it. So, I mean, I don't know either. I'm just like, I've forgotten most of what's happened before the year 2005, or the film was so good it affected me on a level where it unlocked my inner child, and and that's what the great power of the Pixar films. It doesn't matter what your age, it taps into that little boy or little girl or that young person within you.
I mean, I think like with Disney and Pixar, their films always mean more as they grow. They have multiple different meanings to them, and for me, when it comes to Toy Story, all I think about is how, no matter how old you grow, how time moves on and the same things, maybe you don't use them every day or they don't mean what they used to mean to you. What they gave you is always going to be there. And that's what it was with Andy and his toys. The creativity he was able to share with the toys, the memories that he had with them when he moved and he lost them and he got them back, and they were always there to remind him that that part of him still lives on. And I think I always try to hold on to that piece of me, as I continue to grow. I always try to hold on to that childlike nature, you know what I mean? The side of me that's not afraid to explore.
And Dale, did you want to comment on the Toy Story? Okay.
Oh, well, the Toy Story. I love Woody. Always did, always will. I am probably affectionately drawn to Buzz, always, in the sense of he so wants to do good. It's a kind of almost matronly, motherly kind of a feeling. As a grown up, when I saw it, I'm old enough. I was probably in my mid 40s or more. So yeah, Woody essentially, but Buzz also, but in a little bit different way. That's all.
My Toy Story connection, if I have any connection, it's that I don't know a lot about it in depth. I have watched the Toy Story movies partially with my kids and their friends, and have not actually seen a Toy Story movie from beginning to end. So I'm the wrong guy to ask. Pixar, I have been a fan of their approach to filmmaking since Apple and Pixar were together, and it all started because I was a big Apple fan with everything they did and everything they got involved in, and I started investing in them when I just could get a few shares of Apple, and again, they owned Pixar at the time. And then those feelings went over to Pixar because I saw how high quality everything that Pixar was doing under Apple. Then it folded into Disney. And so when I was approached about working for them, there was no doubt that I would join up with them. In Lightyear, what does he struggle with? Questions. Buzz Lightyear struggles with things that he presumed that may not be true, with impressions of people that he may have not got correct, and he finally struggles really with just wanting to go home. When I first was approached coming into this movie. I knew nothing about Zorg. I was hired with the condition that I would know nothing. I would not have any advanced script or any dialogue. Everything would be learned on the spot at the recording sessions. And that was, I'm told, because they did not want me to blab about who he was or what he might be after and how he affected Buzz. Without giving away the ending, I would say that Zurg is, for the audience, a subject between the two to analyze anybody's choices in life and thinking about what they've been and what they're going to do and what they really want in life and what they may have done that they'll change. It's, in some ways, for the audience, it's a good shrink session. And I know who's right and who's wrong, and that's up to the audience to decide.
Lightyear is about Buzz Lightyear and his adventure with these new cast of characters. Underneath that, it's about regret and trying to fix a mistake in your life, and how, you know, these relationships can help you move forward. So Lightyear is the film that Andy saw that inspired him to want a Buzz Lightyear toy. And so what that means is that this is not really a Toy Story movie in that way. This is the movie before Toy Story. And what's so cool about that is that you get to know who the real Buzz Lightyear really was. Socks is a personal companion robot who was gifted to him from a friend to help Buzz out to deal with some of his emotions that he's dealing with. And Socks is both, you know, sort of like a butler who's there to help, but also a good friend to listen, you know, to be there to listen to Buzz. And but then also, you know, mixing those two together to become just a good friend. The approach to, you know, playing Socks has been about the two sides of him. Working with Angus MacLane and the writer on, you get these pages, you know, that the game was just looking at the pages and seeing which side of Socks to sort of bring in. And so there, the two sides of him was the sort of the military protocol side of him, where he was just there to help. And a key to that voice was, you know, yes, Captain. So it'd be like, yes, Captain, the information that you requested is this. The probability of that action would be this. Then that's one side of him. Then the other side would be the more playful friend side, which started with, you know, like, hey, Buzz, would you like a snack cake? And so there's this more friendly side. And those two combined for me was the game of trying to find Socks. My Toy Story connection was I started in high school my love for animation and trying to learn hand-drawn animation. My first year at animation school was 1995 when Toy Story came out. And it, you know, the filmmakers brought it to our school, to this mall, this rented a theater out, and there was no trailers. We knew nothing about it. And we just saw this film that was not hand-drawn, that was animated with this new technology, you know, and it just blew all of us away. And, you know, it made me, you know, get jazzed about cinema in that way, that I just wanted to work with all the folks that did that incredible stuff.
After I finished co-directing Finding Dory, I was looking for my next project, and I kept going back to the films that I most enjoyed watching and rewatching were the films of my youth. And a lot of those were sci-fi action films, and I wanted to make a sci-fi action film. But we work at a studio that makes these important films, and they're funny and touching, and they have to do all of these things. But I kept wondering, can't we just make a sci-fi action film? And at the same time, I kept thinking about Buzz Lightyear and how that universe is something I'd always been connected to and always loved, and merged both the idea of making a sci-fi action film and a Buzz Lightyear film. It occurred to me, why don't we just make that movie? And wouldn't that be fun to do? Because you're on these films so long, I wanted to find something that I would be really excited to see. And that's what and that sense of excitement is what I try to instill within the crew, and you can really see it on every frame. We were inspired not only by the history of science fiction cinema, but in general, the films that I enjoyed overall. There was a lot of a wide variety of inspirational sources for the film, and it was a way, by drawing on a variety of sources, not just rehashing science fiction, that allowed us the unique look and feel of our film in Lightyear.
So I think that anybody who has seen a Toy Story film is familiar with Buzz, the hero who is a little out of step, as Angus likes to say. He's out of step with the reality around him, right? When he thinks he's a space ranger, he's really a toy. That dislocation, that's familiar to people, and I think that everybody who knows of Buzz will come in expecting some of that. Also heroic, also very dedicated and loyal. The hero, the action hero. So we wanted to preserve all of those elements of Buzz in our film. But he's also a sidekick in Toy Story, and we needed to have a more fully dimensional character to be able to tell a full film with as our protagonist. And so we took liberties, shall we say. We added, we made him a little bit more rich and interesting and multi-dimensional, so we have 90 minutes of just Buzz and really enjoy him.
Also, he's got hair.
He's got hair.
Gave him hair when he didn't have hair before, now he's got hair. So audiences won't recognize the hair.
We made him a brunette. I always thought he was blonde. Go figure.
Well, time dilation is the scientific principle that the faster you travel in space flight, the further into time you go. Now, if you go at tremendous speed, you can even go so fast that you're aging slower than everyone back on the planet that you left from is aging. So in our story, Buzz is going on these missions that he's traveling at sub-light speed, but it's so fast that the mission for him only lasts 4 minutes, but for everybody on the ground that helped launch him into space, 4 years have gone by. So for our story, we're seeing him skip through time, and Buzz is slowly separating from the society that he knows, all because he wants to get everybody back home.
Oh.
The cat. Sprinkle the cat. Sorry,
No, that was good. I didn't know that's where you were gonna go. So this is a great question. How do you have these meaningful, deep ideas about guilt and about perfectionism and not make a film that's too heavy? Part of it, I would say, is iteration, because we definitely had several versions of this film that were frankly too heavy. They were a little, just you get into Act 2 and you were just sad. It's hard. And the cat, introducing Socks the cat really helps, because it's hard to take anything too seriously when it's coming out of Socks' mouth. But also making the focus a little bit more on the relationships and less just about the guilt. I mean, it sounds odd. You would think that it would be sadder for him to have had a relationship with Alicia, his best friend, his almost like a sister, his commander, and to then see that she passes. But the fact that he has a relationship, the fact that you see that he is this fully dimensional person who's missing out, means that when you get into Act 2, you still have faith for the guy. He's not a complete, isolated loner hermit person that you have no faith for. You want him to have the beauty and the warmth of friendship like he had in Act 1. And so I think it's more hopeful than it might sound otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I think animation is a medium like anything else, and it's just a story you're telling how you tell it. I think a lot of the other 25 animated films that Pixar has done, there's nothing can be heavier than let's hold hands and face death in the trash incinerator. So you got nowhere to go but up. It's nice, but I think
we're speaking of up. probably the hardest I've cried in a movie.
Yeah.
Right?
So we're this is light. It's light
7
business.
minutes in.
Yeah. I wanted for Lightyear to separate the Buzz character from Toy Story. And in general, the whole film, I wanted it to be kind of a separate thing. And part of that was finding a different voice actor for Buzz Lightyear. Was finding the live action equivalent, if you will, or the more serious action hero. And so where Buzz in the Toy Story films is a side character and a comedic relief, that this Buzz was going to have to be the protagonist that was going to carry the whole film. And to do that, we needed a Buzz which was just a little different. So we tried just thinking about who would be a good action hero star that would also be humorous, but not so much so that it would be a detriment to the sense of peril that they might go through. And immediately Chris Evans came to mind, and what he brings to the role is what he brings to any role, is a sense of legitimacy and a sense of fun and a sense of gravitas, the balance of those things without seeming too goofy. He always feels very legitimate and very authentic, but also has an openness and a commanding thing, but also a sense of self-deprecating. You can imagine him having self-doubt. He can present this frailty that's necessary for a character that's going through change, but can also be a very credible action hero. And he's a wonderful creative partner on the film, and he did a terrific job. It was just every time working with him was a joy. And what he added to it was a sounding board for where we were going with the character as we developed it into this feature. And so he was on earlier than any of the other voice cast. We'd give him the material, we'd play with it, we'd see what he'd bring to it, and we'd adjust the writing to reflect what was best for the character.
So from the very beginning of production, myself, along with the director of photography, Ian McGibbon, and production designer, Tim Evatt, came up with what we later referred to as the 3 C's to kind of govern how we were going to sell this movie, how we were going to make this movie feel like we wanted it to feel. And the first one was cohesive, meaning we wanted the world to feel like it all fit together, that Buzz, the character, the person existed in this world, that things fit together seamlessly, just like you would expect walking down your street. Nothing sticks out as being amiss or feeling like it's from a different place. So cohesive was the first, clear was the second, and clarity is key in an animated film, and especially in an animated film with a bit of a complex story, where you're trying to keep the audience following a series of events, following a character's emotional arc. All that requires a lot of investment from the audience. And the more you can direct them visually with what they should be looking at in any particular shot and any particular scene, the easier it will be to keep them involved. So clarity in the image was really, really important. And we did that through lighting, having things in shadow, having atmosphere in the background, or less depth of field than you might expect, meaning things are blurrier in the background, all to get us to just focus on specific information in the frame. The third one was cinematic. And Angus talks about cinematic a lot. I talk about cinematic. When I think of films that are cinematic, I'm thinking of films that have images that have stuck in my head long after I've walked out of the theater. So how do we make this film feel like it was really shot? How do we take advantage of what we love, or how do we take what we've loved in sci-fi films, adventure films from the past, and put them in this film to kind of give it that realism and give it that immediacy that those films have had. You know, it's funny. Most of the team, or at least most of the team that was on the film early, got to go to NASA and talk to an astronaut or two and get to see what all of those things look and feel like. They got to put on suits and helmets. I did not, it turns out. So my role, director of photography, I came in maybe 2 months after that trip, which is sort of typical for me, that if you're in the art team or you're in the story team or the writer or the director, the visual effects soup, you go on these fun trips. Usually doesn't work out. On previous films, I have been to a dump. You can guess there's a couple films that could have been true for me. I have never been to Paris like some of my colleagues, but seeing the footage they brought back from those research trips and hearing them talk about it, and seeing video later, being able to talk to Tom Marshburn, who was the astronaut we worked with from NASA, who's on the ISS right now, all of that was really crucial in understanding the world that Buzz would live in, and that our story would inhabit. And then certainly going back and looking at films and figuring out what made them successful and why, which of course is like a lifelong study. That's the kind of stuff that really kind of got me ready, I guess. And the rest is just practice. The rest is trying stuff while you're making the movie and hoping every time you try something different, you're getting a little closer and a little closer. Spaceships are definitely a challenge. Shooting inside them is a challenge. I like to think, at least internally, Pixar has this reputation for like, what's the smallest space you can shove a camera in and still actually get something that looks halfway decent? And we keep finding more and more of those situations. So, Buzz sitting in his cockpit, there's a whole history of film of characters flying planes or characters flying spaceships. We could certainly draw on some of that language. But we found that choosing several kind of key angles really helped us get the audience used to traveling in there and used to, feeling like they were strapped in with Buzz. There's not a lot of space in those cockpits. So although you can kind of do anything in CG, using that as a limitation of like, well, I can only actually stick the camera in about three places. And then when I need to add some punch to that moment, I can find some unique way of shooting it just for that section that, kind of pushes it a little bit, but still works, but now suddenly feels more exciting than the thing that we just saw. Early on, Angus had the idea that he wanted this film to be in IMAX, which is super exciting. I've never shot in IMAX before. Pixar's never really shot in IMAX before. So this was a great challenge. And we took about a third of the film we felt would be the most suitable for IMAX, which, meaning it would lend itself to that 1:4:3 boxier aspect ratio much better than the other scenes. And it's spread throughout the film. So you get some in the beginning, some in the middle, and some in the end, which is great. So we filmed those scenes in that aspect ratio from day one. So a scene in the movie we knew we wanted to be in IMAX, that's how we shot it. And when I say we shot it in IMAX, I mean we developed a second lens kit specific for IMAX. We were using a larger format camera, much like they would in live action shooting IMAX, with different properties to the lens. Things look different. The depth of the scene is different. The relationships, foreground and background, are different. It's just a different look, and it may not be recognizable to some, but it is to film geeks like me. And it kind of grounded us in like, okay, this is different. We're shooting this in a different way for IMAX, even though it's all on the computer and it's all a bunch of code and numbers. So those sequences in the regular non-IMAX version, we have cropped out the center to make the widescreen film that you'll see in any regular theater. But even that was all derived from IMAX. So we really took that challenge seriously and embraced that opportunity to shoot in a different way. It was super fun. When I think about scenes in the film that stand out for me, or scenes that really showcase what I do and what our team does, there's never one, and it's actually scenes or moments. And I identify scenes with the person that made them or the people that made them. So in layout, I'm supervising a group of artists, and those artists are all assigned different scenes, and they own that piece of the film. So seeing where they started and what they brought to that scene, and then how it looks in the finished product up on the screen, that's what I'm remembering. Like, the whole movie looks great, and I am proud of everything that the team has done and that we've all done together. but I will always have memories of like, oh, I remember when Andrea came up with that shot, or I remember when Johnny proposed this idea that is now in the film, and the film wouldn't be the same without it. Like that's the stuff that I really love. That's what really excites me about working on these films, is getting to see so many different creative ideas come from different people, from different backgrounds, from different they're in different parts of their career, honestly. That is what I remember when I look at the movie, is not the struggles or oh, that film that worked out better than I thought. It's just, no, I that artist really did a great job there.
There are so many spacesuits in the movie Buzz Lightyear, and we had to approach making them through research and then think about how they would progress over time. So the first step is understanding, what's a spacesuit? What does it do? How does it work? So to answer that question, we started with research. We went on a research trip to NASA to look at how spacesuits are made, and even get a chance to be in a room with them and to touch them and to understand the materials that they're made out of and all the layers that go into making a spacesuit. And then we had a spacesuit design consultant come give a talk to the crew. And we got to learn from that design consultant, what are they looking for? What is their priority? What is the most important part about a spacesuit? And we learned from them that it's an important and complicated life support system that really makes a spacesuit so special. And from there, we went on to finding inspiration in cinema. So there are lots of great sci-fi movies like Star Wars, Star Trek, Prometheus, 2001, Gravity, Interstellar. There's so many great spacesuit depictions out there in cinema, and we got to treat that like a visual buffet and draw inspiration from the suits that we thought looked the coolest. And then finally, we got access to a tangible replica. Someone had made a mock-up, a replica of a spacesuit, and I actually got to put it on and try to move in the suit. And what I really learned from that experience is just how much structure and life support systems weigh on you when you wear this, and just how much it changes how you move. So for example, spacesuits have a heavy metal ring, and if you're bouncing around and don't have the helmet on, that can just bop you in the nose. So you want to be really mindful of all the components and what they're for, and treat them as intended. And what really landed for me when I was wearing this suit is how much that life support system is there to keep a human alive, because spaceflight incurs risk. And it really made me respect Buzz's journey that much more by reminding me that while I see spaceflight fairly often as a person living in this century, there still is risk and danger involved in going up in a rocket, especially if it's the test run for a rocket. And Buzz does that again and again and again with different suits and ships and fuel crystals to try to get his family and his friends home. And that made me really embrace the heroism of our main character. So the Toy Story Buzz is a toy that was inspired by the movie that Andy saw in the theaters. The Lightyear Buzz is that character on which the toy is based. Now, visually, the cool difference between these two entities is that the toy is manufactured to look right at toy scale. At this size, has manufacturing seams and screws on it that really show you that this is a toy. But the Buzz Lightyear that you're going to experience in the movie is the human Buzz Lightyear wearing a Space Ranger spacesuit. So some of the differences you're going to see are the proportions are meant to fit on a human. So the belt is in a different place, the shoulders are in a different place, the helmet is in a different place. We still get that iconic instant read and that look of the Buzz Lightyear we know and love, but now it's clear that this is on a human character. And you're going to see a lot of modeling details that give you clues and indication that this suit was made at human scale for a human to wear. So you'll see panels and seam details cut in that show you how it was made. In addition to that, you're going to see the shading. That brings it into a really believable world. And the colors that we choose, we had to be faithful to the original colors. But the wear that you see on top gives you signals that the scratching in the wear is again happening at human scale. Where two pieces rub together, you might see some color wearing off. And those cues and that rich visual detail help add up to the final suit. And finally, you're gonna see graphics integrated all over the suit. Helpful messages like "do not block" next to a vent, or "this side up" next to a panel. And those messages are there to inform the spacesuit wearer how to wear and to use the suit. Now, all of these details add up to a human Buzz Lightyear wearing a Space Ranger costume. And it's a real wow moment when all of the people working on these separate parts show their work together, and you see it, and it's lightning in a bottle. That's the human Buzz Lightyear. So Alicia's hairstyles had to change frequently in the film because we needed to show that Alicia is embracing life on Takani Prime, and she is moving forward with her life. So we need to see her go through decades of age and visit her several times in her journey. Now, one of the really cool things I'm excited about in this movie is how Alicia's hair came to be in our computer graphics pipeline. We had a fantastic grooming artist named Sophia who really wanted to make authentic braids in Alicia's hair. She developed new systems and processes we hadn't seen before to be able to offer this to our character. So the first time we see Alicia, her hair is back tight in braids. It's a very utilitarian look. The second time we check in with Alicia, there are braids on the side, but half of the hair is loose on the side, and it gives her a really stunning and iconic silhouette. And the way the hair moves is just gorgeous. You'll see her again as she ages, and you'll see the color start to change, start to become grayer in some places. It's still our Alicia that we know and love, and she's getting frailer over time. And all of that together, we're so proud to put on screen. It's a new level of technical detail in braiding and in natural curly hair that we haven't seen before. Airman Diaz is one of the beloved Lightyear characters. Airman Diaz is in the flight crew. This means that he wears a jumpsuit, a utility belt, and a puffy vest with a beautifully puffy collar, a squawk box on top, and patches that show us where he is in Buzz's time progression. So, Diaz's jumpsuit is fit perfectly for his body. The vest on top has a lot of details. There's tons of pockets to put things. There's padding. There's quilted detail on top, all to protect Diaz if he needs to carry something heavy on his shoulders. And finally, we get the really appealing puffy collar of Diaz, which adds so much appeal to the roundness of his face. And makes a lot of sense too, when you think about he might have to be carrying things on his neck, and it's a nice soft protection for his neck. All of it comes together in a really appealing way for Diaz. The character that I'm most excited for you to see on the screen is Alicia Hawthorne. The first time we see her, she's in the Space Ranger costume, fighting alongside with Buzz and exploring an alien planet together. Now, the second time you see her, she's in her jumpsuit, leading her crew in mission control. And the third time you see her, you're going to see her in her formal commander jacket. And then as we visit her again and again through the montage, the jacket changes to show her embracing life and time progressing. For example, she'll get different Star Command pins. You'll see her get more ribbons for tours of duty. You'll see her rank patch grow, and as she becomes more decorated over time. And in one of the visits, we get to see her military uniform as a maternity uniform. Now, as time progresses, that same jacket that we know and love her in starts to look a little baggier as she starts to slouch over and look more frail. And we experience, from Buzz's point of view, watching his best friend get older and start to fade away. And finally, we see her in her hospital gown at her frailest moment, embracing the end of her life and reaching out to her best friend to share one more message. And all of those costumes together show us what Buzz is giving up by staying focused on his mission. He's giving up a life on Takani Prime. He's giving up a family, and he's giving up a deep friendship that he could have stuck around to be part of. But instead, he made the sacrifice to keep on piloting test ships, trying to get his crew home.
So the grounding idea of the cinematic look of our movie being one of the cinematic and chunky, it's kind of a, well, I think the first thing is that Angus wants to make a movie that looks like a blockbuster from the 1970s, 1980s, right? The cinematic look that he's after is kind of one that's a little bit like more mature and aged up than something you might typically be like expecting from a Pixar film, right? And so that means we are putting all kinds of like detail and grit on the screen and into our models and all of our designs that are this kind of like new for this film, right? And then the chunky aspect of it is very much like inspired by that sort of like 1980s kind of consumer electronic, like cassette futurism kind of look that we were really kind of jiving on as sort of the area that we wanted to be in terms of the overall design of the film. So that's kind of the confluence of those two things is the look of our film. So let's see, some of the research that we did, like a big thing for us was we really wanted to incorporate like a sense of reality into the world that we were building. We took a awesome trip down to the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, which is NASA, and that was like hugely informative for us. We really wanted the world that we're creating to have this kind of tactile push button sort of mentality to it. We don't have any touch screens or kind of newfangled looking technology. We really wanted to embrace that kind of old school look in all of the tech of our world. So that was huge. Also getting to kind of walk around NASA and see the work environment for the astronauts and all the professionals and support staff that are there really like gave us a window into what the world of professionals who are doing that kind of work is like, right? So it was just as interesting to see the bulletin boards and the hallways of NASA where like the astronauts are working, as much as it was getting to see the awesome rockets and all of their training equipment, because that's kind of the thing we're trying to make. We're trying to make a real fleshed out world that basically feels bigger and more expansive than just the rooms you get to see in our film. So that was a super awesome opportunity and a lot of fun. All right, yeah. So we have a lot of spaceships, all kinds of cool technological sets in our world. I think we really we wanted that tangibility, that realism in all of the places in our film, but probably a place that you see it most is like in the cockpit, right? Buzz is surrounded by all this, like these levers, these buttons, these lights. We kind of really wanted it to feel like a real place that we were sticking a camera into and actually shooting in a real set. And a big part of achieving that was kind of making sure that we had that realistic level of detail. Like oftentimes, in animation, we're kind of stylizing or abstracting, shapes and forms to kind of make them a little bit more appealing or cartoony. And we definitely do that in this film as well. But we definitely lean farther into trying to have the level of fidelity and the detail in Buzz's surroundings that you might actually see, in a real cockpit, like adding all those cool wires and graphics applications. Like you look at the inside of an actual, jet cockpit, and it's just replete with stuff, right? And we really wanted that sense, right? So that when you are, flying on a mission, when Buzz is kind of going through outer space, you have all this stuff that's kind of, shaking and rattling around in the cockpit. You have all these lights and buzzers, flashing and making noise, and basically just something that exudes that sense of, risk and danger, which is kind of like the sort of vibe that we're going for. It's like not this kind of clean, safe, enterprise he's going on. Like he's risking his life in the pursuit of his mission. And so like building sets that had that level of detail to kind of elevate that sense of danger was kind of a key part of the whole look of the film.
What is the Turnip?
The Turnip is kind of a big, I refer to it as like colony ship, but it's a kind of a large, kind of self-contained vessel that has kind of everything that you would possibly need to basically land on a planet and carry out a mission, right? Has like all these, people, staff, materials, gear, vehicles. So it's a massive ship, right? And when they land on Proxima or on Takani Prime, it is, obviously just kind of a stopover because they are alerted that there are some interesting materials on this, planet surface, and of course they get stuck there, right? But luckily, the Turnip is designed such that like it has everything you would be able to, possibly need to be able to start some kind of a base or an outpost, which is what our characters end up having to do, right? Because they're marooned there, and luckily they at least have the gear and the material because of the nature of the ship to be able to begin testing like hyperspeed fuel so that they can hopefully make their way off the planet. So I think the top level, aspect of Takani Prime is it's kind of a place that you don't really want to be, right? It's habitable. Our characters are able to survive there, but it's hostile. It's filled with stuff that kind of, wants to kill them. It's you've got all these vines that want to drag you off to the jungle. You got bugs that want to eat you. It's just kind of not an ideal situation, right? Especially because they're stuck there. And so I think when we were designing it, everything kind of stemmed out of that, right? The area that we actually crash land in, it's kind of arid. I guess there's a stark beauty to it that I think looks really cool and cinematic, but at the same time, they're kind of stuck out in the middle of nowhere. And of course, they're in the midst of all kinds of stuff that kind of is constantly coming at them. So that also kind of like informs the design of the base too, Star Command base. Even though it's kind of a science enterprise where they're trying to develop these hyperspeed ships, they also kind of need a little bit of a security aspect to it too, to protect them from the flora and fauna of the world. And so it has a quasi-military base feel to it just by necessity, because everybody at Star Command needs to stay alive in order to be able to continue their mission. There are so many awesome scenes in the movie that are visual achievements for the team. I gotta say some of my favorites. Scenes with Zurg are just really awesome. That character just has such a presence, and when he and Buzz are on screen together, like some of the scenes with the lighting and the shots, it really, I look at it and it looks like a scene straight out of a film that I would have watched as a kid, like something that was up on the big screen before movies were CG, right? And it's really exciting for me because that was kind of everything that we were going for. And they're very dramatic characters, and there's also just inherent drama to the world that kind of comes together in some really cool imagery that I'm super excited to see myself, like on the big screen, and I'm excited for audiences to see, definitely.
What is Lightyear about? Lightyear to me is about perseverance and it's about embracing fear and obstacles and making them your allies, as opposed to fighting against them. You can pull them in, and these things that you face in your life, I feel like if you embrace them, you'll overcome them. And if you run from them, they'll overcome you. And to me, Lightyear is about learning how to take what you're afraid of and run with it and become successful with that fear. Music is always there to tell you sort of the subtext of what's happening in a scene. Music is there to support the emotional side of a story. It's not always just to point out the action and all of these things. It's actually to give you a window, an insight into how a character is feeling. When you just look at someone, you can't always tell what they're feeling. And music is the thing that can help us understand what somebody is going through. Without the presence of music in a film, an audience can get lost into what's happening. And so music is there to support that emotional content, to help you empathize and understand what characters are going through. And you don't want to go too hard with it or push too hard. It's sometimes you only need one simple little idea to get a point across, but it's about evaluating a particular moment in a particular character's life and seeing what you can do to help support that so the audience understands. Explaining my long-standing relationship with Pixar, I suppose the best way to look at it is it's like, you know, those friends you have when you're a kid and you grow up with those friends and you share the most intense moments growing up. You share everything you love about all the nerdy things that are in your life, whether it's, the Muppets or Star Wars, it doesn't even matter. It's all of these things. And it is sort of a grown-up version of that. You get to experience that just pure love and joy for the things you're creating in a way that when you were a kid, you enjoyed sort of consuming Star Trek and consuming the Twilight Zone, all of these things, like the fun you had, loving the things you loved as a kid. That's what it's like working with Pixar. And that's why I love it so much. Yeah. Pixar's relationship to storytelling is I guess the best way to describe it is it's about always going for the truth and the honesty in a particular moment. Many animated films are there to tell the joke and nothing but the joke. And Pixar refuses to sacrifice the truth behind a story, the actual feelings that characters have. They're not afraid to be bold enough to say, no, this character is incredibly sad right now. This character is going through a tough situation. And the reason that I feel they're so successful is because people can identify with those ideas. People identify when somebody is sad, somebody they know is sad, or somebody in front of them is going through a tough situation. And I think Pixar is one of the much braver companies in the world that is able to put that out there and say, no, it's okay to be all of those things. And we're going to present it to you as it is in your own life, but through this crazy, fantastic lens of what we do at Pixar through animation and sound and music and all of these things, but not forgetting what it's really about is their genius. And that's I truly believe that. I would describe the Lightyear score as a complete love letter to all the movies I loved growing up. All of the sci-fi adventure movies, all of the action movies that I just ate up as a kid and still eat up today. It was everything I do is born out of that love and fascination and inspiration I got from watching all those films as a kid. And Lightyear is no different. Lightyear is basically a love letter back to all of them, saying thank you for inspiring me. And hopefully what we do here with this film will inspire the next generation of kids that'll grow up and go out and make things that inspired in a way that inspired them when they were kids. One of the things that was always fun to do is to establish a very solid theme for a character or a film. And all the movies I watched growing up had that, and they were scored by people like Bernard Herrmann or John Williams or Jerry Goldsmith and many, many others. They all developed these themes and this music that became a character in the film itself. And I was drawn to that immensely growing up. So for me, I wanted to do the same for this movie, was to create themes for Buzz and for Zurg and for Izzy and have them be characters themselves in the movie that could help tell what the characters are doing, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. All my favorite movies you can relive in your head by just listening to the score. So the goal for me was to kind of deliver something that if you listen to, you could relive that movie, you could hear that story in your head without even seeing the pictures. That to me was the goal on this, because that's what I loved as a kid. Well, my probably favorite connection to Toy Story, I did get to work on 2 Toy Story shorts, Toy Story of Terror and Toy Story That Time Forgot, which were both so fun to do. But my favorite thing actually doesn't necessarily involve Toy Story itself, but it does involve Randy Newman. And Randy, I found out through my agent, he called and said, "Hey, I want to get in touch with Michael." He just wanted to tell me how much he loved Lost and how much he loved the music in Lost. And I thought, oh my God, like, I remember when he did that, I was like floored, because Randy is a hero to me. And especially the work he's done in the Toy Story world, which is incredible and beyond iconic. Like, to have that sort of validation from someone who I respect and love so much, that was sort of the biggest thing that came out of all of this for me. So it was just that connection to Randy Newman, and then over the years getting to know him and respect him as I do. It's just that was one of the coolest things for sure.